Har, 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 har. I'm gonna just move it slightly. I think that's perfect. It's been a while since I've been behind the camera and I feel a little bit nervous, I'm not gonna lie. But I've been drawing for like the last few hours. I'm taking off my glasses for the last few hours. And I thought about this and I was like, I need to make more videos where I'm actually like talking about the things that I truly actually enjoy. So like making my OCs. Recently, due to the season being of Art Fight, it is July, I really fleshed out my characters like so much more. Like I have a whole notion just completely about my OCs. Like I've been so obsessed with just forming their stories and like making them more alive, I guess. I want to share that. And I have two main characters, Charlotte and Theodore, who I have spoken about, I think on my TikTok a couple times, but for the most part, like I've never really introduced them. There's more characters to the story. Like there's two others to the like main group. Because I'm so into like book talk, romance book talk, so fantasy romance book talk, not romantasy, fantasy romance book talk. Let's make that clear. I've been so inspired by like the romances in those stories that I feel like I finally have a good story with my OCs now. I just really want to share that. And since I'm doing an illustration of my OCs, like what better time than right now to like record myself drawing and actually talking about my OCs and their story. I think for now it'll be fine just to go over the two main ones, Theodore and Charlotte, since their story is kind of limited right now. Like I can't really go into the middle parts of the story. I really only know the beginnings and like the prequel to it. I'm still building it, but I know the characters pretty well so far. So that's the plan. Let's hope it's fun. Let's hope it's good. I hope that I filmed myself in like a reasonable area. It's officially the next day. I went to bed literally right after filming the introduction to that video. So I didn't do anything from where I ended last night to now, like literally nothing. So today, I'm actually going to finish it. Excuse the fact that this is in fact not recorded. Like my tablet physically, but I didn't decide that I wanted to actually make a video about this drawing or about my OCs until I realized that this drawing maybe had a little bit of potential. I first want to go over like what the actual drawing is and kind of the steps that I'm going to be taking throughout the drawing. Right now you just saw me do a thumbnail and I'm just doing the initial sketch over the thumbnail where I'm making the actual drawing look good. I also do a coloring and rendering, more of like a painterly style. I don't really know what to actually classify my style as, but it's kind of painterly, kind of not. I try my best to make it look clean, but I'm going to say this right off the bat that I had an immense struggle doing this one. It was honestly probably the worst experience while drawing I've had in a while, or at least while coloring, because the problem with this drawing itself is, and I'll get more into this, is the fact that it's a scene, so it's not just two characters floating in space. It's supposed to be an actual scene that the viewers are sort of, you know, immersed in, if that makes any sense. Also, don't mind me putting in these bottles. I was too lazy to actually figure out how to draw a bottle from memory, so that was the choice that I decided to make. I also had trouble when it came to actually filming the content of the line art, so I accidentally put it in slow motion while filming. So the entire time that I was making the video, it did it in slow motion. So I had like video files that were maybe like an hour long, and I didn't realize that until I was trying to actually import them onto my Mac. And then trying to fix the issue just was so much trouble, more than it was ready, or more than it was worth like trying to figure out. So you're just gonna see a time lapse of the actual line art as well, because I couldn't be bothered. I will get into the character lore in a little bit, but for now I am just gonna like show what I'm doing to set up to getting to the rendering part, which is the most important part of the drawing, obviously, is rendering. I decided to use a poser because I was just a little lazy, and in a second I'm gonna explain a little more of why I struggled with this piece in general.
I have made it to the actual shading portion of this. And if there's one thing to know about me, shading and I are not like this. We are like, if I could spread my fingers farther, I would, because I hate shading with a passion. But I know that I have to. Like, I know that this picture needs to be made. And I'm just staring at it. Like, I'm trying to use multiply layers. I'm like watching tutorials. I can't seem to figure out how I prefer to shade, because typically my art is like simple shading, so I don't really have much light going on. It's typically just like, oh, I shade where it kind of gets dark. Like, I don't do dramatic scenes often. We'll see what I come up with.
With that actually said, I at this point am doing probably, I think, my second or third round of trying to shade her skin here. This is the one that I end up keeping, but it's still a bit of a struggle trying to figure out how I'm gonna go about actually shading. This time I decided to do like a general shading kind of thing before going into doing, multiply layers on top of it. But again, with that said, I want to get into the actual lore of these characters. The plotline of my story revolves around the main character, Charlotte, who is the blonde girl in this speed paint. She is from the Alunaris family, which is a divine lineage that have for many, many years, I haven't really decided how many, but many years, kind of been a sub-royalty in this kingdom that Charlotte lives in. They have a ability to tap into the gods and basically summon the power of various divine beings. I haven't really decided what the people in their world kind of call their gods, but for now, Charlotte is the destined vessel, which is basically the daughter of the current divine vessel. The divine vessel is the person that is able to tap into the gods and use their powers, basically. Charlotte is the only daughter of this Eleanor's family, so she, from a really, really young age, knew that she was going to have to step up and be basically the next vessel. It was never really a question to her whether or not she would have to take on the responsibility, because it was really presented to her at a young age. So to fit into society, she really conformed her personality around being perfect for them. And that includes being like perfect around her mom, who is a very nice lady, but very, very strict when it comes to the responsibility as what they need to take on as a family. She's very naive and kind of doesn't really have any real world experience. And that's basically her biggest character flaw, is that she's very, very naive to the real world and to what her responsibilities as divine vessel actually truly means for the people around her. And the real issue of her story is that as the divine vessel, she needs to be 20 years old to be able to wield the powers. And the powers are directly connected to a deck of cards, kind of like tarot cards, or if you think of Lucy Hartfilia from Fairy Tale, that's kind of the same idea, that she has to have the physical item to be able to connect with them. But the deck of cards do not allow her to use them until she comes of age, which is 20 years old. At the beginning of the story, Charlotte is actually 19 years old, so she's not able to wield the cards even if she were to become Divine Vessel. Charlotte has a very close friend called Machi, who is basically her protector, older brother character type, I guess. He and her met when they were very, very young at banquets that were held in the Eleanor's house, and at these events, the Divine Knights, which are knights that directly serve the Eleanor's family, they met through one of those banquets, and she very much clung on to Machi due to his quiet nature, and he kind of fascinated her because he never really cared about the fact that she was divine or going to be this like ultimate pope being in their universe. And there are strings of fate that basically tie Machi and really every main character in this story together. At a banquet, Charlotte and Machi went a little too far from the main event and ended up stumbling into the hallway, and Charlotte nearly gets abducted. Machi automatically jumps to action and protects Charlotte, which the god of fate or something, some divine force, decides to tie their fates together, and Machi has this uncontrollable urge to consistently and always protect Charlotte forever. They aren't aware of this divine force that is tying them together, and they're also not aware that there are two other people that ended up being tied together with their fates. And this is where I'm going to bring in Theodore's story. Theodore is the bastard or illegitimate son of Duke Ravelin. Duke Ravelin is a duchy that basically very much believes in the Eleanor's family and the divinity. And so the Ravelins and Theodore in turn were always often aware and very around the Eleanor's family. The only difference was that Theodore, since young, was very much a careless guy. Not careless in like a rambunctious way, but careless in like a, I really just cannot give a crap about anything going on in my life because like literally nothing matters. He's not very brooding. If anything, he's more mischievous and a little more, I would say, bratty, but I'm not really sure that that's a good way to describe him. Nobody knows this, but Theodore also hears voices, except these voices aren't really trying to connect with him in a graceful way like they are with Charlotte, and more as his voices are a forceful nature that pries into his life and controls them with his desires. With their desires. Theodore, for as long as he can remember, was always very much like careless about everything going on around him. And a lot of this is because of the fact that he never really feels like he has his own chance to feel anything. It's always the desires of the, what I like to call whispers, but I haven't really given them a proper name yet. They're whispers that are trying to talk to him, and they are some sort of divine force, but they're a little more chaotic and mischievous than Charlotte's are. And because of the fact that Charlotte only really connects with them through cards, or is supposed to only connect with them through cards, his connection to this god is actually a little more shameful or a little more mysterious since it's never really been seen before. Theodore's life was never really horrible, as most bastard sons are. Realistically, his family treated him kindly. He was never thrown into deep, dark rooms where he was never let out or stuff like that. If anything, it was more like they were just around each other, but not really like trying to be besties, if that makes any sense. He has 3 siblings, and the Ravelin children don't treat him badly. They don't bully him. If anything, some of them want to have a relationship with him, but their father doesn't really look on that really well, considering that Theodore's upbringing or Theodore's birth is kind of a messy topic in the household. And so they never forced him to go to balls or any official events. If anything, it was kind of not really needed from Theodore, considering that he wasn't a real Ravelin. But on one night, Theodore felt a urge that he had never felt as strongly as this, and it was to go to a ball. Sorry, I meant banquet. And this banquet was held at the Eleanor's house, which was one of those things where he really would never interact with the Eleanor's family. But he appeared, and it was kind of a shock to most people in society because they never saw Ravelin's son. I mean, it was one of those things like, why is he here, you know? And his appearance was actually something that tied him together with Machi and Charlotte. While he was checking out the grounds of the Elenares family, he ran into, or Moraz watched from the sidelines while Charlotte almost got abducted. He wanted to jump into action, but Machi was like way too fast, and he didn't get there in time. But his appearance there is one of the reasons that he's tied together so strongly with Charlotte. Following this event, Theodore's appearances at banquets and balls and official society events skyrocketed. People were a little confused, like, what is this guy doing here? But he was appearing more and more, and he always found himself nearing Charlotte but never coming close enough to speak to her. He watched from across the room or walked past her and caught a glimpse, but he never really actually spoke to Charlotte. The people in the kingdom don't really have a full understanding of the divine powers, and Theodore is actually included in that. He doesn't really know how Charlotte's powers are supposed to work, so when he started going to the events a little more, he was a little confused as to why Charlotte always seemed so put together and pristine when he saw himself and how he interacted with the voices in his head. All he saw was chaos, and to her, or for her, it looked like it was just pristine and perfect. It very much confused him, and so that's kind of one of the reasons why Charlotte intrigues him so much. The inciting incident of my story is Charlotte's mother being assassinated at a ball held at Ravelin House. And after this ball, Charlotte is thrusted into the position of being the divine vessel, and without really any preparation for it or like being aware of the fact that that was what was going to happen, she is too young to hold the cards, and now she has this responsibility to basically find out what's going on with the death of her mother. And they aren't aware of it, but the ones that murdered her mother were actually a rebellion who opposes the divine family, because the divine family for many, many years has been very discriminatory towards people that are not of a certain race. I probably should mention this, but Charlotte is a human and Theodore is an elf. So in this kingdom, elven families and human families are far more prominent than anybody of any other race. Specifically, for humans, it's less like they're really accepted, and it's more like Charlotte's family is because they're a divine family. But the elven kingdom kind of views other races as below them, and the divine family is no exception. They treat others of other races quite badly. And Charlotte, being as naive as she is, doesn't really understand the harm that her family is doing. So when she goes off on this mission to basically figure out what's going on, she doesn't have any powers. She's very naive to the real world and what's going on. So her story is really just of growth and trying to, I guess, become a real person, if that makes any sense. And Theodore just happens to tag along. This is very much a D&D inspired story, so I really like the, I guess, plots of D&D stories. They always seem very fun. And so Machi and Theodore and Charlotte and one other character that I haven't introduced go on an adventure together, and that's kind of where I came up with my characters. As for this drawing, it probably seems quite romantic because it's supposed to be. Charlotte and Theodore are characters that have always been romantic partners in my head, so I am writing this story specifically because I want that romance to come to life.